My name is Carrie Negron. I'm 27, and the first time I turned the key to my own front door, I didn't film it. I didn't post a "we did it" carousel or a twirl through with a lo-fi beat. I just stood in the empty living room and let my lungs relearn what quiet is supposed to sound like. Not the kind of quiet I grew up with. The one that filled the house after my mom said, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Or the silence that came after my dad muttered, "We're doing our best," which usually meant, "We're buying Natalie another car and pretending you don't exist." This silence, it had warmth. It hummed back. It felt earned. The house itself was modest. A two-bedroom fixer-upper with a fence that leaned like it was tired of standing, and a mailbox that tilted in sympathy. I even bought a plastic flamingo for the front yard and named him Gary. He leaned too, but in his own way. Survivors recognize each other. I wasn't rebellious growing up. I was just transparent, the kind of kid people look through. While Natalie, my older sister, took up every spotlight within a 5-mile radius, I learned to survive in the background noise. When I left home, there were no slam doors or tearful goodbyes. I just folded a few shirts, scribbled a note that said, "Thanks for the roof," and slipped out of their lives as quietly as they treated me. Years passed. I worked, saved, and stitched my way through long days as an auto upholstery tech, fixing more than torn seats. Sometimes I felt like I was reupholstering the inside of my chest, patching the soft places that had been ripped by years of indifference, healing in silence. No audience, no applause. By week 3, I had fallen into a rhythm. Work during the day, tinker with the house at night, fall asleep under a ceiling fan that groaned like it had secrets, and every night I locked all 3 doors, not because I was scared, but because sometimes the past learns how to knock. So when I got home late one Thursday night, takeout in one hand and a small toolbox in the other, I was expecting another quiet dinner. The wind had been wild earlier, so I assumed Gary had blown over. But when I checked the porch, he was gone. Not behind the bush, not near the fence. Weird. I frowned, climbed the steps, and slid my key into the lock. The door creaked open, and the quiet I loved vanished. Sitting on my couch, the one I dragged up the stairs alone while cursing gravity, were my parents. Like a sitcom with the laugh track missing. Dad had his shoes off. Mom was sipping tea from my favorite mug, the one that said, "Property of the woman who pays the mortgage." "Oh, good," Mom said, smiling like she'd been waiting for her cue. "You're home. We figured you wouldn't mind." I blinked. Mind what? She gestured around the room like she was a realtor giving a tour. "Making this a family property now." Family property. Like I was supposed to just nod and say, "Sure, let's rewrite the last 20 years. I set the takeout bag on the counter and carefully started lining up the soy sauce packets one by one to keep my hands from shaking. Mom always mistook composure for consent. "You work such early hours," Dad said casually. "We took the master bedroom. You'll want the smaller one near the garage. Less noise." I smiled. How thoughtful. They didn't even notice the sarcasm drift by like smoke. "And Natalie," Mom added brightly, "she needed somewhere quiet to study for her realtor exam, so we offered her your old room. She's not here right now. She's with her boyfriend, but her ring light's already set up." Of course it was. A ring light in my guest room, because why wouldn't there be? "So, just to clarify," I said slowly, "you moved yourselves in, you moved Natalie in, rearranged my furniture, claimed my bedroom, and decided this was a family property, all without asking?" Mom smiled tighter, like she was explaining patience to a child. "Don't be dramatic, Carrie. This is your home, but we're a family, so it's our home too." There it was, the family logic that made every boundary sound selfish. The fridge hummed, almost like it was protesting with me. I opened it. Almond milk, off-brand turkey slices, a shelf of frozen diet meals, the kind my mother always told me to try sometime. I closed the fridge door. Why now? Mom's eyes softened into that scripted tenderness she used before saying something invasive. Because you finally settled, she said. You're stable. We knew you'd be ready for us. Translation: we ignored you until you owned something we wanted. I nodded slowly. Makes sense. My calm seemed to unsettle her. They expected yelling, a tantrum, maybe even tears. They didn't realize silence could be sharp when you'd practiced it long enough. Dad looked toward the hallway. Where do you want us to put your grandfather's dresser? Natalie thinks it'll look better in the master. Page 2, I said absently. Page 2 of what? He asked. Of the list, I replied, pulling a notepad from the drawer and scribbling something meaningless. What needs to be replaced? Mom frowned. Replaced? Yeah, I said, giving them a polite smile. Some things are just used. Dad shrugged. Whatever makes you happy. It would, because what I didn't tell them was this. The name on the mortgage wasn't mine anymore, not directly, and the entity that owned this house didn't recognize family property. It recognized contracts. I picked up my phone. A text glowed on the screen. Ethan Rivas. How's your Thursday holding up? No heart emoji, no fluff, just him. The kind of man who taught me how to separate what you love from what can be taken from you. I looked at the screen, then turned it face down. I could handle this alone. The next morning, I didn't even make coffee. I just grabbed my keys, stepped over my dad's shoes, planted dead center in the hallway like he was marking territory, and drove straight to my lawyer's office. Kevin looked up as I walked in. You were right, he said, sliding a folder toward me. They've been listing your address on multiple forms, utilities, registration, even your father's driver's license. I stared at the photocopy. There it was, my home, their claim. It looked surgical, cold, and deliberate. I said, do it. Kevin nodded. Lock change notice filed. Official transfer hits Monday. That was all I needed to hear. By the time I got home, the air felt different, cleaner. I walked into the kitchen, set down my groceries, and smelled burning eggs and entitlement. Oh, good. We used your eggs. We were out. I said, you mean my only eggs? She laughed. We'll add it to the family expense chart. There was a chart now. Dad poked his head out from the hallway holding my old Bluetooth speaker. This still work? Natalie wants to use it for her dance videos. Letter, I said. They froze, surprised by my calm. Just make sure you ask the new owner first. Mom blinked. New owner? I said. The house was transferred into a trust a while ago. I'm just the occupant now. Her smile cracked. What does that mean? It means, I said, cracking open a soda, legally speaking, none of you live here. And come Monday, the locks change. Trust policy. The silence that followed didn't hum. It clanged. That's not funny, she said quickly. You wouldn't actually do that. You're right, I said. I wouldn't. But the trust, it has rules. She hurried to the counter, flipping through the folder I'd left earlier. You really filed this? Page 2 is the best part, because on page 2, right under the legal header, were the names of my parents and Natalie listed as unauthorized occupants, subject to removal. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw anything. I just smiled. By morning, the house smelled like coffee that wasn't mine. Mom had brewed an entire pot in my kitchen, humming like this was a weekend getaway and not an unauthorized residency. Dad had already rearranged the living room, moved the couch, and proudly announced he'd optimized the space. It was 7:14 a.m., and I already felt like a stranger in my own home. I didn't say a word. I just walked past them, grabbed my keys, and left again. Sometimes silence is the sharpest way to say, you lost access.
Kevin's office was tucked above a small insurance agency. No marble floors, no receptionist with a headset, just stacks of paper and the faint smell of ink and purpose. He looked up as I entered. "Morning, Carrie," he said. "You look resolved." "I am," I said. "Let's make it official." He pushed a folder toward me, thicker than before. "They've already used your address for voter registration, credit card billing, and even your father's driver's license renewal. And this," he tapped one sheet, "is a change of address confirmation for a vehicle registered under Natalie's name. Same house." I felt a muscle twitch in my jaw. She'd done it too. My sister, the family sunbeam, now orbiting where she thought the light was strongest. Kevin folded his hands. "Do you want to file for immediate removal?" "No," I said quietly. "Let's give them until Monday. Lock change at 10. He nodded, sliding another document toward me. "In the meantime, you might want to stop using your own address for any mail. Transfer everything to the Trust P.O. box. It'll make the next steps cleaner." Trust. That word still carried weight in my chest, heavier than it should. It wasn't just a legal entity. It was my safety net. The thing I built quietly when everyone else assumed I'd never build anything at all. 2 years ago, when I was detailing cars for extra income, a man named Ethan Rivas used to bring in his classic Mercedes every other weekend. He'd sit on the curb drinking coffee while I worked, asking questions about adhesives, stitching, and texture matching. One day he asked, "Ever thought of owning your own shop?" I laughed and said, "I barely own my lunch." But Ethan saw something in me that my family never had: focus. He introduced me to a real estate consultant, helped me understand leverage, risk management, and the strange poetry of paperwork. Not gifts, guidance. We dated later, slowly, and when he asked what I wanted most, I said, "A space no one can invade." He taught me to hide ownership behind a wall of legality, to put the deed in a trust so my family couldn't sniff out opportunity and label it love. So when I finally bought this little house, I didn't buy it as Carrie Negron. I bought it under CN Holdings Trust, where I was both manager and beneficiary. That trust had rules that made no room for surprise family tenants. Kevin slid another paper forward. "Want to know the best part?" He pointed to a highlighted paragraph. "Your father listed this property on his medical insurance as his primary residence. It went through last week." I blinked. He smiled. "Risky, classic overreach. Don't worry, once the lock change is in place, it invalidates automatically, but it does strengthen your claim for unauthorized occupancy." My stomach twisted, but not with guilt. It was the strange ache of realizing the people who raised you would rather use you than see you Ezzo. Kevin leaned back in his chair. "You don't owe them an explanation, you know." "I know," I said, "but I want to give them a lesson. Boundaries, reality. It's the only thing they can't rewrite." By the time I drove home, I felt a calm I hadn't in years. I parked, grabbed a grocery bag from the back seat, and headed inside. They were both there, of course. Dad was now watching TV in my robe. My robe. Mom had printed something and taped it to the fridge. The Negron family expense list. Rent, carry share, TBD. Utilities, split 3 ways. Groceries, Natalie's organic preferences apply. Repairs, family pool fund.
"Mom," I said slowly, "what is this?" She beamed. "Just some organization. You know how you love structure. This way it's fair for everyone." "Fair," I repeated. "You moved in without asking, ate my food, and took my bedroom." "Well," she said, "it's still your home. We're just making it feel like ours again." Dad didn't even look up from the TV. "It's what family does, sweetheart. We share." "Funny," I said. "I don't remember you sharing the college fund." That got his attention. I walked to the fridge, peeled the expense chart off, and folded it neatly. "By the way," I said, "I met with my lawyer today." Mom blinked. "About what?"
Oh, nothing serious, just clarifying who legally lives here. Her smile wavered. Kari, stop this, you're being cold. No, I said softly. I'm being clear. I walked to my desk, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out a copy of the Notice of Security Update. Then I taped it to the fridge where her chart had been. Dad squinted. What's that? I said. Policy reminder. Read it. He read the top line aloud. Notice of Security Update. All unauthorized occupants must vacate premises by Monday, 10 a.m. Silence. Even the TV felt quieter. You're joking, Mom said finally. Does it look like a joke? My phone buzzed. Ethan again. Need me to come by? I typed back, not yet. Let them see the clock tick. Because that's what it was now. A countdown. 3 days left before my parents and sister learned that being family didn't mean being entitled. Monday at 10. That was the new rule. And this time, I wasn't breaking it. Saturday arrived dressed like calm, but calm is a costume Chaos loves to wear. The house smelled like cheap perfume and toasted bagels I hadn't bought. When I came downstairs, Mom was rearranging my spice rack for efficiency, and Dad was humming along to an old radio like he'd been living there for decades. I stood in the doorway, arms folded. Where's Natalie? Mom turned, cheerful. She'll be here soon. She had a showing with her study partner. Oh, what's her name? Malene. Such a bright young woman. My pulse tightened. Malene. As in Ethan's ex-girlfriend, the one who'd once told me, you're lucky. Ethan has a soft spot for lost causes. And now she was Natalie's new mentor. Of course, the universe loved irony. Anyway, Mom continued, oblivious, Malene thinks Natalie has a natural gift for real estate. I bet she does, I said dryly. She's been selling lies for years. Mom frowned. That's not fair. I shrugged, heading to the kitchen counter. The folder with the trust documents still sat there, thick, sealed, waiting. The calm part of me smiled. The lawyer in me, because that's who I felt like these days, was counting hours, not words. Dad called out, we made coffee. He poured it into one of my mugs, the one that said, ask me about boundaries. He didn't notice the irony. I didn't answer. Instead, I grabbed my keys and went out front. That's when I saw her. Natalie pulling into the driveway in an Uber, sunglasses on, phone glued to her hand, a pink suitcase rolling behind her like a stage prop. Finally, she said, stepping out, I had to Uber here. Why isn't the family car in the driveway? I tilted my head. You mean the silver one? She nodded impatiently. The one parked illegally all week. It was towed this morning. Her jaw dropped. You're joking. I smiled. I love spending my Saturdays on hold with the impound lot. You'll have to pay the fine yourself. She blinked at me, trying to gauge if I was bluffing. When I didn't flinch, she looked at Mom. This is ridiculous, she muttered. I can't live like this. Oh, relax, Mom said. It's just temporary. Right. Until Monday. Natalie frowned. What's Monday? I pointed to the fridge. Read the notice. She walked over, still wearing her sunglasses, indoors, of course, and read aloud. Notice of Security Update. All unauthorized occupants must vacate by Monday at 10 a.m. Then she laughed. Oh, come on. You really printed this? Are we in a sitcom?
Nope, I said. A trust. Dad turned. You're still going on about that trust nonsense? Not nonsense, I said. Legally binding. Mom crossed her arms. Carrie, this is petty. You're tearing the family apart over misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? I repeated, taking a slow breath. You moved into my house, changed addresses, ate my groceries, and turned my guest room into a studio. Natalie perked up. It's not a studio. It's a branding space for my career. I raised an eyebrow. A ring light and borrowed walls don't make a career, Natalie. she scoffed. You've always been jealous. Jealous of what? Your unpaid internships or your inability to read a contract? Mom gasped softly. Carrie? Page 2, I said. They all blinked. Dad frowned. What's on page 2? Your names, I said, under unauthorized occupants. Before they could respond, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, Kevin was standing there, sharp suit, calm eyes, and a folder labeled Eviction Enforcement, Private Property. Mom's face drained of color. Carrie, what is this? Kevin nodded politely. Good morning, Mrs. Negron. I'm here on behalf of the CN Holdings Trust to serve notice of unauthorized residency. Dad's voice sharpened. You can't be serious. Kevin opened the folder. According to public records, you and Mrs. Negron both listed this address as your primary residence without the property owner's consent. That's a violation of state law and trust policy sections 3A through 5C. Natalie snorted. What? You're the fun police? Kevin didn't even glance at her. Miss Negron, you also violated Section 9 by attempting to monetize property images for personal use. What? She snapped. I pointed toward her open laptop on the counter. The listing photos you posted online for your dream home staging reel? Yeah, my living room. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Mom tried to cut in. Carrie, please, we're your family. Kevin's tone stayed calm. Family has no bearing on ownership. You're all listed as non-registered occupants. You have until Monday, 10 a.m., to vacate. Dad's voice cracked. You don't have to do this. Actually, I said, I already did. Natalie threw her hands up. This is insane. You think you're some kind of genius because you learned legal jargon? I smiled. No, Natalie. I think I'm someone who finally learned leverage. Kevin closed his folder. You'll receive a copy of the notice by certified mail. Consider this your verbal acknowledgement. Mom took a step toward me, tears threatening. Carrie, please be reasonable. I looked at her, then pointed to the paper on the fridge. That's my reason. Monday, 10 a.m. No exceptions. She whispered, You wouldn't really lock us out. Not me, the trust. Dad glared. So what? You're hiding behind a piece of paper now? No, I said quietly. I'm standing behind one. Kevin nodded once and left. The door clicked shut behind him. The silence that followed was heavier than any shouting could have been. Mom turned toward Dad, her voice trembling. She wouldn't do it. Natalie whispered, She would. I just smiled faintly, grabbed my keys, and said, You've got 48 hours to find somewhere else to study. And as I walked out, Natalie's voice followed me down the hall, sharp, shaking, desperate. You've always been bitter, Carrie. Always. Maybe, but bitterness keeps better records than forgiveness ever did. By Sunday morning, the house sounded like a bad symphony of zippers, drawers, and muttered guilt. Every cabinet door was open, every suitcase half-zipped. It looked less like my home and more like the aftermath of an emotional hurricane. Dad sat at the kitchen table stirring coffee he wasn't drinking. Mom was pacing between rooms, sighing loud enough to register as a protest. And Natalie, well, she turned the guest room into a war zone of tangled chargers, makeup palettes, and half-folded designer knockoff clothes. I sat outside on the porch in a camp chair next to Gary the flamingo, who now... Inside, chaos buzzed. But outside there was still air, and it belonged to me. I was halfway through pretending to read when the porch door creaked open. Mom stepped out, holding a cup of coffee like it was a peace offering. Carrie, she said softly, we need to talk. I didn't move. We're already talking. She sighed. You can't just throw your family out. We gave you everything. I turned to look at her. Everything? You gave me a trash bag full of clothes and a bill for the broken washing machine when I left for trade school. Her lips tightened. You lived here rent-free for 18 years. I was a kid, Mom. That's not rent. That's parenting. She swallowed hard. We were trying our best."
"No," I said quietly. "You were trying your best with Natalie. The rest of us were just background furniture." Her mouth opened, then closed again. For a second, she looked smaller. But the moment passed. It always did. Inside, Natalie's voice rose over the hum of the house. She was on the phone calling one relative after another. "Unbelievable," she said. "Carrie's gone rogue. She's evicting us like we're strangers. Yes, she's serious. No, it's not drugs. It's worse. She's organized." Through the thin walls, I heard Aunt Dana's voice on speaker, clear as day. "Didn't y'all leave her at the bus station that Christmas? Maybe zip it and start packing. God bless." I almost smiled. God bless, indeed. That afternoon, Dad joined me on the porch. He stood for a while before speaking. "What's the point of all this, Carrie? Revenge?" "No," I said. "Closure." He frowned. "You think kicking us out fixes the past?" "It doesn't fix it, but it stops it from repeating." He shook his head. "You're colder than I thought." I looked at him. Really looked. "No, Dad. I'm just done mistaking tolerance for love." He didn't have an answer for that. Later that day, Natalie came outside, clutching a tissue that still had a Walgreens sticker on it. Fake crying, of course. "You really think this is what success looks like?" she asked, voice trembling on purpose. "A lonely, bitter woman throwing her own family into the street?" "Success," I said, "isn't measured by how many people stay in your house. It's measured by how much peace you can keep when they leave." She scoffed. "You've always been like this. Distant, defensive, jealous." "Maybe. Or maybe being ignored for 20 years rewires your volume settings." She threw the tissue onto the porch. "Dad's blood pressure's up. Mom's been crying for hours. You really want to do this?" I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "You moved in 3 days ago, Natalie. I've been packing my emotions for a decade." She blinked. "And besides, you've got places to go." "Like where?" she snapped. "Well, Dad changed his license to this address, so I'm sure the DMV is going to love that little oops." She paled. "And your boyfriend, didn't he just move into that shiny new rental with the Peloton and the 2-car garage? I'm sure he'll be thrilled to have company." "You've always hated me," she said through gritted teeth. "No," I said softly. "I just finally stopped pretending I didn't." When she stomped back inside, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The evening sun was low, turning the porch gold, and for the first time since I'd bought this house, it felt like it was mine again, even with boxes still half open inside. My phone buzzed. A voice message from Ethan. "Hey, just checking in. You don't have to do this alone, Carrie. Remember, you built walls for a reason. Not to keep people out, but to keep your peace in." I smiled faintly, replayed it once, then put the phone down. Because he was right. This wasn't about eviction. It was about equilibrium. That night, I heard footsteps outside my door. Then Mom's voice, quiet, pleading. "Just sleep on it," she whispered. "I plan to," I said, eyes already closed. And I did, soundly, deeply, while the people who once kept me awake packed their bags and tiptoed through the kind of silence they'd never learned to respect. Monday came early. I was up before the sun, sitting on the edge of my bed with a cup of black coffee and a calm so still it scared me a little. The kind of calm you earn after a lifetime of tiptoeing. Down the hallway, drawers slammed, suitcases scraped the floor. Mom's voice rose and cracked like she was scolding the walls themselves. I didn't intervene. I'd already said everything that needed saying. At 9:45 a.m., a gray sedan pulled into the driveway. Kevin stepped out, folder in hand, followed by a stocky man with a tool belt and a calm smile. He knocked once, politely. "Morning, Miss Megrin." This is Luis, the locksmith." I opened the door wide, right on time. Luis gave a nod. "Shouldn't take more than 45 minutes. You got the new keys?" I held up a small silver ring, fresh cut. From down the hall, Dad's voice boomed. "What the hell is going on out there?" He appeared in his robe, hair uncombed, eyes wide like a man waking up in someone else's nightmare. Luis didn't stop working. Kevin didn't flinch. "This is a lock change," I said, taking a sip of coffee. "Standard trust procedure." Mom appeared behind him, eyes red. "You can't just change the locks while we're still here." Kevin calmly flipped open the folder. "Legally we can, but as a courtesy, we're allowing you to finish packing before the locksmith completes the final installation." Dad's voice cracked. "Carrie, you're really doing this after everything we've done for you?" I looked him straight in the eye. "After everything you've taken?" "Yes." Natalie stumbled out next, dragging a pink suitcase that looked heavier than her life choices. "This is abuse," she hissed. "You're throwing your family into the street." Kevin extended a second envelope toward her. "Actually, this includes a relocation voucher funded by the trust for your parents." She ripped it in half, paper fluttering to the floor. "I don't want your fake charity." "Good," I said. "It wasn't for you." She froze. "You're turning us against each other." I shook my head. "No, Natalie, you did that when you decided I was useful only after I had something you wanted." Dad tried to play mediator. "We were going to include you eventually." "Sure," I said, "right after Natalie became a licensed realtor and started selling my guest room." That shut him up. Luis called from the front door. "Deadbolt's changed." Kevin nodded. "That means the property is now secured. Legal occupancy is revoked." Mom's eyes welled. "Carrie, please, we're your parents." I exhaled slowly. "And that used to mean something." Kevin reached into his briefcase. "One last thing," he said. "Certified mail arrived Saturday, addressed to the trust." He handed me a small cream envelope. The handwriting made my stomach twist. Neat, deliberate, and achingly familiar. It was from Grandpa. He'd passed away last month. The postmark was dated 2 weeks before his death. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single note written in his slanted cursive. "Carrie, if they ever try to take what you've built, remember, you don't need their permission. You just need the deed and your name on it. Grandpa." I stared at the words until they blurred. Mom saw the letter in my hand. "Is that from him?" she asked softly. I nodded. She took a hesitant step forward. "What does it say?" I met her eyes, really looked, and for a fleeting second saw the woman who used to braid my hair before first grade, before the favoritism, before the distance. Then I folded the letter neatly and handed it to Kevin instead. He read it silently, then looked up. "It says final occupancy is revoked. You are no longer welcome here." Mom's face crumpled. Dad's shoulders sagged. Natalie stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time and didn't like what she saw. Louise finished the last door. The click of the lock was the cleanest sound I'd ever heard. Mom turned to me one last time. "We raised you better than this." "No," I said quietly. "You raised me to be silent, to stay out of the way, to say thank you for crumbs and call it love. Now I'm raising myself." Dad's voice.
I met her gaze. "You did. All of you. And I let you. Until now." She blinked, eyes wet but not from remorse. And then she left. The silence that followed wasn't hollow this time. It was full, thick with air, with relief, with the quiet hum of a house remembering who it belonged to. I walked barefoot through every room, the kitchen, the hallway, the master bedroom, and felt my lungs expand with something like peace. I didn't celebrate, didn't post, didn't call anyone. I just opened the window, let the breeze in, and whispered, "You're home now." For the first time, the house didn't echo back. 2 days later, the quiet had changed shape. It wasn't the same eerie silence that used to hang in the air when I was ignored as a kid.
This one hummed differently, steady, protective, earned. The house looked like a place that finally exhaled. No shoes in the hallway, no diet meals crowding the freezer, no glitter pen expense chart taped to the fridge, just clean counters, open space, and the kind of stillness that doesn't ask for permission. I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee and the new keys resting beside it. They gleamed in the sunlight, small, simple, and absolute. There were no texts from Mom, Dad, or Natalie, only silence, and that was fine. At noon, the doorbell rang. For the first time in a week, I didn't flinch. It was Kevin, holding a six-pack of craft sodas and a smirk that looked suspiciously like pride. "Place looks different," he said, stepping inside. "Yeah," I replied. "It sounds different, too." He nodded. "Locks changed, liens cleared, utilities updated. You're officially the only one registered at this address." "Good," I said. "That's how it should be." He hesitated before adding, "You did the right thing, Carrie. Most people never get this far." "Maybe," I said, looking around. But I had to lose my family to find my home. He gave a slow nod, understanding the kind of math that doesn't show up on paper. Then he handed me a small document sleeve. Inside was a certificate, the final notarized copy confirming my trust management rights. No one could take this from me now. That weekend, I decided to have people over. Not family, friends. My kind of people. A few guys from trade school, my new shop partner Lena, and of course Kevin, who were weeks later. Mom posted something on Facebook. "Some people forget who raised them." So I posted a photo of my new shop opening. Caption: "Some people taught me what not to become." No tags, no names, but the comment section lit up anyway. Antani left 3 fire emojis. An old classmate wrote, "Proud of you, girl." Even Ethan commented, "Two good locks and better boundaries." I reacted with a key emoji. Nothing more. Because some stories don't need retelling.